The water, Rawat Kadash. The water, Kai. Thank you, Holy Spirit. All praises to Ahaya Kased. That's all praises to Anoki said. That's all praises to the great I am loving kindness. Bahashem Yeshaya. Bahashem Matzah, the Lamb. In the name of the Messiah, the Hamashiach. Shalom, family. This is little son Sabal, Nabaya. Family, today I am about to present to you a very multifaceted lesson. I am actually going to share with you the way this lesson came into fruition because it is relevant with where we are right now and what's going on spiritually. So I woke up in the morning, and every morning I wake up and I go outside and I pray. And every morning I walk past the same tree. But this time when I walked past the tree, I felt something. So I stopped and I looked at the tree and I thought to myself, okay, Messiah, what are you trying to tell me? Because I understand that the Messiah will speak through creation. But I was busy. So I didn't have time to just sit there and chill out with this tree all day. So I kept walking, went about my business. Now all of you guys are aware of how YouTube works. At least I think you're aware because you're on YouTube. So you know how YouTube will show you things that are relevant to the types of things that you have been watching. Whatever your interests are, those things will appear in your YouTube feed. Well, it struck me as odd that this video popped up on a channel that I had never heard of, and the subject matter had nothing to do with the things that I had been looking at. But I did think the video was interesting, so I listened to it. And the video was all about people who actually lived inside of the hollow of trees. I found this subject to be quite fascinating. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not planning on living in the hollow of a tree, but still, I was intrigued. Now it might have appealed to me because I read My Side of the Mountain when I was a little boy. I don't know how many of you have read that book, but I enjoyed that, and I enjoyed the movie after I read the book. But you know, I used to love to do that. Read the book, then watch the movie. And the movie was never as good as the book. My mom was and is a librarian, just so y'all know. Anyway, the point is, I started watching this video, and I enjoyed the video. Now, I'm going to come back to the rest of this story a little bit later, because right now, we're actually going to jump into some scriptures. Like always, we're going to begin in Isaiah chapter 28, and we're going to read verses 9 and 10. That's Isaiah chapter 28, verses 9 and 10. It says, "Whom shall he teach knowledge, and whom shall he make to understand doctrine? Them that are weaned from the milk, and drawn from the breast. For precept must be upon precept, precept upon precept, line upon line, line upon line, here a little and there a little." So family, we understand that we get our understanding via the Holy Spirit, via the precepts, and there are precepts in life. Let's go to Psalm 119 and let's read verse number 15. That's Psalm 119 verse number 15. It says, "I will meditate in thy precepts and have respect unto thy ways." Now drop down to read verses 55 and 56. That's Psalm 119 verses 55 and 56. It says, "I have remembered thy name, O Lord, in the night, and have kept thy law. This I had because I kept thy precepts." You see, ladies and gentlemen, when you keep his precepts, not the ones that you like, not the ones that you think are easy for you to keep, but when you keep his precepts, when you walk in his ways, understand that you will remember his name, because by keeping his precepts, then you begin to understand his character. You see, you can call on the wrong name, but when you really call on him with your heart, when you understand who he is, what his character is, when you call on his true name with your heart, then you're going to get a whole new level of understanding. Drop down to verse 100. I understand more than the ancients, because I keep thy precepts. Drop down to verse 104. Through thy precepts I get understanding, therefore I hate every false way. You see, family, when you are getting information and understanding from various sources, with all thy getting, please get understanding, and do understand that all money ain't good money. All these various sources that we're getting information from, be sure to have the spirit of discernment and be sure to understand what's good and what's bad. And if you don't know, don't just rock with it, but ask the Father and have patience and long suffering. Wait for a response. Let his word be a lamp unto your feet and a light unto your path. Now, family, I have something to show you in the book of Isaiah, but we're not going to go there just yet. First, let's go to the book of remembrance of Enoch, the Essene book of Haggai. Now let's go to Seth chapter 7. And remember that Yatsakad and Kavah are Adam and Eve. And let's just start reading at verse 1. Chapter 7, verse 1, and we're going to read through verse 17. So we're going to read in the book of remembrance of Enoch, the Essene book of Haggai. We're going to read Seth chapter 7, verses 1 through 17. It says, and it came to pass that Kavah began to worry that she could not raise up baby Kenah unto the Lord, and she began to fear that she would fail in her task as a mother. And she thought upon how the Lord had given her the Keli, and taught her how to make bread, so that they could keep fear away. And she thought, I do not know how to divide between comfort and fear in behalf of this child. And the heart of Kavah began to be burdened with her doubts and her perplexities. And Yatsakad was also troubled. And in these things the presence of Matsar drew near, and his spirit was able to move out in Eden beyond the region of Simcha. Okay, family, in case you have forgotten or if you have never read in these books before, Matsar the Decadent is another name for Semihaza. It is another name for the devil. Let's keep reading. And from that day, Kavah began to look upon the serpent with disdain, and she felt no sorrow as she threw rocks at Arum. That's the name of the serpent, y'all, Arum, to keep her away from the place where she made bread. And in her heart, she yearned to be rid of her anxiety. And inside the soul of Kavah, there began to be a struggle with temptation. And the question Arum asked, do you know how? Would not leave her mind. And the sayings of Anokised remained in her heart when he told them that baby Kenah was a gift that was given unto him. And now he had given the baby to them. And it came to pass that in those days Anokised came to visit often, to teach them how to care for the baby. And he taught them to use soft grass that was tied in the middle as a garment for the baby. And it was like the grass they used to dry their hands at their wedding. And even though he taught them all these things, the doubts and anxieties never left the heart of Kava, and she continually worried that she would not be able to distinguish between the comfort of Anokised and the fear of Matsar, or as it could be said, she could not be sure how to rightly divide between good and evil, in order to keep her child in the way and raise him up unto the Lord. And the song Anokised sang at the birth of baby Kenna seemed to only be sad to her, and forebodings would descend upon her, and she did not know why. And day by day her fears and doubts grew. And it came to pass that one day she was weeping after seeing a room in the way, while she was gathering a seed, and she went a-walking. And she had baby Kenna with her. As she walked, she came upon a cedar tree, which is given life by Messiah, with the feelings of clinging tenaciously unto all the good in you. And she said to the tree, as she uncovered baby Kenna, and she held him out, "Look, I am a mother now, see?" And she wept. And she said, "But I am afraid." And the subtleties of Arum were in her heart, and the spirit of Matsar drew near. And he said to her in her heart, "You could become like God, and know how to keep fear from your child, if you use the tree that is before you. For you are very good, and you are good enough, that you are willing to give the child back to Anokised, for him to raise up." And it came to pass that Kava took heed to that voice, and she determined to use the cedar tree, and she intended to speak to it about her desires. And in her heart she did not want the child to be near when she took her case before the tree. So she took little Kenna home, and he rested on the moss with his father. And she returned back to the tree again, and she knelt upon the ground in the dirt beneath it, with her legs folded under, and she bowed herself forward, with her face toward the ground, and she held her face with her hands, and she said to the tree, "Oh, help me to feel all the good that is in me, for I am good enough to give the child back to Anokised for him to raise. For I am afraid I cannot be a mother and raise him up unto the Lord." And the tree was afraid, and it cried out, "Do not speak to me so." And the tree desired to turn her face away from Kava, but Kava did not hear the tree, and she was comforted by the thought that she was good enough to be willing to give the child back. And thus she used the tree to deny her motherhood, and the subtleties of Matsar and Arum twisted the truth, that which is good and that which is evil. And thus our first mother used an element of creation to magnify a lie that came from her doubts and fears, and she partook fully of the spirit of the tree, and drank the feelings of the tree into her soul, and she filled herself falsely with the feelings of the good that was in her, because she was willing to give the child back, and it brought her comfort, and her fears seemed to abate. But I beheld her as she sat under the tree, and I saw her arise, and when she stood up to leave, she shook both her hands as though she felt she was dirty. And she rubbed her hands upon her garments, and never before had any such feelings come to her. And as Kava departed, and she was a little way off from the tree, she turned herself and looked back at the tree, and her eyes were opened, and she beheld the tree to be darker than all the trees around it, and it did not shine with the light of God, nor radiate the life which is in it, which is the arm of the Lord. And she saw the tree, was no longer clothed upon in righteousness, and she was perplexed, but she continued on her way and wondered what it could mean. So family, I'm not going to read any more of this account because we've already covered all of this when we did the sorcery series a while back. I just wanted to bring that refresher to your mind that Eve used the cedar tree in a way it was not intended for it to be used. She abused the feelings of that tree to make herself feel good and to magnify a lie. Now, remember that the righteous definition of the cedar tree is that it feels to cling tenaciously into all the good that is in you. So the cedar tree allows you to see the good in yourself and in others. And you guys will see more information like this if you get the Handbook of Established Righteousness, which just became available for us. When you get it, just go to the section about righteous definitions and you'll be able to look at the different things that many different things in creation actually feel, what their righteous definition is, according to the Spirit that gives them life. So I wanted you to understand exactly what the cedar tree feels. Now I want to speak to you a little bit about another tree. I want to talk to you for just a moment about the sycamore tree. So I want you guys to understand what the righteous definition is for a sycamore. And the righteous definition of a sycamore tree is to constantly find new ways to see the Lord. Isn't that interesting? To constantly find new ways to see the Lord. Now with that said, family, let's go to the book of Isaiah. We're going to go to the book of Isaiah and we're going to read in Isaiah chapter 9. That's the book of Isaiah chapter 9. That's the book of Isaiah chapter 9, and let's read verses 6 through 16. That's the book of Isaiah chapter 9, and we're going to read verses 6 through 16. And pay attention, family, to verse 10. We're going to read Isaiah chapter 9, verses 6 through 16, and pay special attention to verse number 10. It says, "For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder, and his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, the Mighty God, the Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace. Of the increase of his government and peace there shall be no end, upon the throne of David and upon his kingdom, to order it and to establish it with judgment and with justice from henceforth even forever. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will perform this. The Lord sent a word into Jacob, and it hath lighted upon Israel. And all the people shall know, even Ephraim and the inhabitant of Samaria, that say, in the pride and stoutness of heart, the bricks are fallen down, but we will build with hewn stones. The sycamores are cut down, but we will change them into cedars. Therefore, the Lord shall set up the adversaries of risen against him, and join his enemies together, the Syrians before and the Philistines behind, and they shall devour Israel with open mouth. For all this his anger is not turned away, but his hand is stretched out still. For the people turneth not unto him that smiteth them, neither do they seek the Lord of hosts. Therefore the Lord will cut off from Israel head and tail, branch and rush in one day. The ancient and honorable, he is the head, And the prophet that teacheth lies, he is the tale. For the leaders of this people cause them to error, and they that are led of them are destroyed. Let me read verse 16 again. For the leaders of this people cause them to error, and they that are led of them are destroyed. Are y'all hearing me? Are y'all hearing this scripture? Do you understand that if you don't get your information directly from the ancient and honorable, the head, if you don't get your information from the Most High, our power, that these leaders can lead you astray right into a ditch? Anyway, let's talk for a moment about the verses that we just read. We started off with a prophecy of our Messiah. Most of us have read these verses before. But then, look what it started saying about y'all and y'all's cousins. It said that they say in the pride and stoutness of heart, the bricks are fallen down, but we will build with hewn stones. The sycamores are cut down, but we will change them into cedars. What? So family, there is a lot going on in these verses right now. You see, family, when you choose not to walk in humility, then you start walking in pride. You start walking in stoutness of heart. So these people, they said, we don't have to turn to the Messiah. We can build with hewn stones. They're saying they're going to build with the stones that are left over that come after destruction. You're going to destroy a building and they're going to build back up with those stones. And then look at the examples that they brought out for the trees. Why does the scripture show that the sycamores are cut down, but we will change them into cedars? Well, do we remember, family, what the sycamore feels? What the righteous definition is of the sycamore tree? It is finding new ways to seek the Lord. Are you hearing me? Continually finding new ways to seek the Lord. But these people, they don't want to turn to the wonderful counselor, to the mighty God, the everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace. No. They said the sycamores are cut down, and we will change them into cedars. No, they're not telling you that they're going to actually change the sycamore into a cedar tree. Oh no, they said, we're going to do like our first mother Eve. Understand that we're going to feel good about ourselves because we're going to misuse the feelings that are in the cedars. Now, were they actually saying that? No. But understand that Isaiah was a Melchizedek high priest who understood what righteous element was. He understood the things that are in this handbook of established righteousness. So he understands what the righteous definitions are. So he understood why sycamores and cedars needed to be put into this verse. He wanted to show you the error of these people. They were trying to magnify a lie. You see, they thought they could build as a people without the Messiah. Oh, but look at verse 11. Therefore, the Lord shall set up the adversaries of Rezin against him and join his enemies together. Wow. You see, family, when you allow your leaders to cause you to error, then you are no longer on the path to salvation, to everlasting life. No, then you're on the path to destruction. Now, just to build on what we just went over, I want to show you something more about sycamores and cedars. When you look at this word sycamores in the Strongs, it is number 8256 in the Hebrew. If you guys remember one of the lessons that we had last month, we went extensively into how certain words speak to you in a circle. And sycamores is one of these words. I don't know if I will have time to put it on the screen. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. But I can tell you what it says right now. If it is on the screen right now, then great. But if it is not, just listen to what I am saying. Or break out your Strong's Concordance and look at it yourself. You can see the letters repeating. It has a shin or a sha, followed by a kwa or a kof. Then there is a mem or a ma, followed by a hey or a ha. And then it starts repeating. You got another shin or a sha, followed by a kwa or a kaf, and again with another mem or a ma. Remember that the Hebrew is a picture language. It is a language that accurately shows the right relationships with the spirits of element in creation. In other words, it is a righteous language. So the picture that it paints is a picture that says, be nourished by the circle of life and revelation. And then it repeats, be nourished by the circle of life. So all of a sudden, when you see that this word for sycamore actually breaks down to be nourished with the circle of life, and then you understand that the righteous definition for the sycamore is continually, that is something that is a circle within itself, continuously doing something. It is saying continuously seek the Lord in new ways. Are you understanding me? And what is my favorite verse in the second stick? 1 Nephi chapter 10, verse 19. Let's read it. 1 Nephi chapter 10, verse 19. For he that diligently seeketh shall find, and the mysteries of God shall be unfolded unto them by the power of the Holy Ghost, as well in these times as in times of old, as well in times of old as in times to come. Wherefore the course of the Lord is one eternal round. And so now we understand. Now we understand why the words in sycamore speak to you in a circle. Because they're speaking to you about the Messiah. And the course of the Lord is one eternal round. Now let's take a look at the word cedars in the same verse in Isaiah. Isaiah chapter 9, verse 10. In your Strongs, that is in the Hebrew, number 730. Now remember, we just read in the book of remembrance about how Eve used the cedar tree, and she actually misused it. You know, family, that's the thing about a tool. A tool you can use for the way it is intended to be used, and it's a good thing. But then you can flip it, and you can use a hammer that is used to drive nails in. Instead, you can use that hammer to knock somebody's teeth out. And it is not intended to be used in that way. So now you just did a very bad thing with the hammer. So let's look at this. Let's look at this word cedars. It begins with an aleph or an ah. Then there is a resh or a ra, followed by a za or a zan. But the picture that this word paints, what it says is power from the beginning or from the head that is a weapon or a tool. And now we can see how true that is in the very way that our first mother was able to misuse the cedar tree. And we understand why in verse 10 the examples of sycamores and cedars are being used. All praises to the Most High Power. Now, before we go any further, let me finish telling y'all a bit about my story. If y'all were here from the beginning of this message, then you remember I started telling you about the story. If you guys came in late, well, just go back and then you can hear the beginning of this story. So this was the same morning that I got up and I went out and walked past the tree and I felt something from the tree. You guys know all that part of the story already. And so then, here I am, and I told you guys about the channel on YouTube that I found and the video, and I started watching the video, and remember this video was about people who were living inside of trees. Well, let me tell y'all something. I started to look into this video, and I kept noticing something. All these different trees that all these different people were living inside of. 90% of these trees were sycamore trees. And I thought, wow, what is it about the sycamore that makes people want to live in it? And let me tell y'all, when I finished watching that video, I then said to myself, wait a minute. I had an encounter with the tree this morning. What kind of tree was that? So I went back to this tree that I had the encounter with, and I looked at it and I studied it. The bark was very peculiar. The leaves were very different. I said, let me see what kind of tree this is. So I have an app on my phone where I'm able to take pictures of different animals and trees, and then the app tells me what types of animals or trees that they are. So I use my app, and oh my stars and garters, turns out it was a sycamore tree. Can't make this kind of stuff up. So then I got really interested in the sycamore tree and into these hollow trees, and I started studying different hollow trees, and I found out that all over the place there's just sycamore, sycamore, sycamore. People just love to live in hollowed out sycamores. So I want to share this information with all of you. Have any of y'all ever heard of the Thomas Sharp Spencer Memorial? It is in Castellan Springs, Tennessee. I'm going to read to you what this memorial says right on the inscription. It says, on this spot stood the hollow sycamore tree in which Thomas Sharp Spencer spent the winter of 1778 through 79. Deserted by his companions for fear of Indians, Spencer helped build at Bledsoe's Lick, 50 yards south of this spot, the first cabin in Middle Tennessee, and planted the first crop of corn. He was killed by Indians April 1st, 1794, on the site since known as Spencer's Hill. So that is just the first example I want to show you of someone living in a sycamore tree. Here is another example. A guy by the name of Wyandotte John actually lived in a hollowed out sycamore log. Here is a picture of Wyandotte John. He was actually a native. He was a Wyandotte. His actual name was John K. Rahu. Now you might wonder, how big must these sycamores have been for people to actually live in them? I have an article here that says the American sycamore can be gargantuan, growing up to 120 feet tall with a massive trunk. In 1770, George Washington recorded the girth of a sycamore on the Ohio River that measured 45 feet around. The largest sycamore in the state is located in Tulsa's Maple Ridge. When last measured, it stood 108 feet tall with a crown spread of 114 feet. The property owners say it drops leaves the size of dinner plates. It drops leaves the size of dinner plates. Wow. So these were some pretty big trees. Kind of makes you think of the Disney movie Pocahontas. Remember when she sang about the sycamore tree?
How high does the sycamore grow? If you cut it down, then you'll never know.
Here is another example, and it's actually quite well known. You can actually look up the Pringle brothers, and it'll bring up a lot of information about them online. I'm not going to go over their whole story, but I will read to you just this one little paragraph about them. It says, "They took up residence in a sycamore tree and lived there until the fall of 1767, when John went back to the South Branch and learned that the war was over and that they were no longer wanted as deserters. After some delay, he returned to the sycamore tree, now known as Pringle Tree, with good news. The brothers returned to South Branch River Valley and told their story." And so their story became very well known, and it is a famous account, and you can actually now visit, from what I understand, you can actually visit the spot where the original Pringle tree was, and now there's a new tree growing there from the same root system. So I guess it's kind of the same tree if it's growing from the same root system. Check these people out. David Cecil Mounts and Margaret Peggy Klein were married on April 5th, 1809, and settled in the Tug Fork River area in what is now Virginia or West Virginia. While the couple was building their permanent cabin, they temporarily lived in the hollow of an old tree. And then there's this one, family. Look at this. Historic Mount Adams. Legend has it that the picturesque hillside of Mount Adams was originally called Mount Ida in honor of its first recorded resident. This was Ida Martin, who it is said lived alone in a hollow sycamore tree on the hill a little north of Fox Sawmill east of Deer Creek during its earliest years. And then blah 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 about the rest of that. Y'all can read that if you want to. This is very easy to find. Just put in Ida Martin sycamore tree into your internet browser and you'll be able to find it. And family, I wanted to show you all this. This is a tourist attraction in Kokomo, Indiana. You can go to Kokomo, Indiana, and you can see the sycamore stump. Let me read to you what the inscription on the sycamore stump says. It says, "The sycamore stump is one of Howard County's few remaining landmarks. The tree originally stood in the west end of Howard County, about 2 miles north of New London, along the north bank of scenic Wildcat Creek. The huge tree stood 100 feet tall before storms broke it down to a huge hollow stump. The trunk was more than 57 feet in circumference, and one of its lower branches was reported to be 8 feet in diameter. Newspaper accounts at the time the stump was moved to Highland Park on Sunday, June 18, 1916, reported the tree was 800 years old." Wow, the stories that some of these trees could tell. And also there is the wigwam tree, which was actually a tree that some Native Americans actually lived in at one point in time. It says the wigwam tree was a hollow sycamore near Loemi that, according to John Carroll Power in History of the Early Settlers of Sangamon County, was once measured at 18 feet in diameter. And here's the tragic part. Look what it says. It says, A.E. Meacham took a 10-foot rail, held it in a horizontal position against his waist, and turned entirely around inside the tree. It was about 18 feet in diameter outside, and was long used as a wigwam by the Indians. The entrance was at the east side. It was safe when there was only Indians in the country, but some vandal claiming to be civilized set fire to it and burned it down. Savages. Now, family, last but not least, there is the account of George Burkhart in Harlan County, Kentucky. He lived to be 125 years old. He married his fourth wife at the age of 110 and lived 15 years after that. The aged Kentuckian in question was George Burkhart, and one of the most remarkable things in connection with his history is that it has never been published, but Harlan County is in the mountains and does not possess one of those professional new gathers, a newspaper. Burkhart was born in Germany in the year 1725. Soon after, he proceeded to Virginia, where he married. The union produced 5 children, and his wife died. He married again, and in the year 1800 removed to Kentucky. He settled on Crank Fork of Cumberland's River, 14 miles south of Harlan Courthouse, and with his family took shelter in an enormous hollow sycamore tree. By the way, Harlan County is not wholly unlike the Big Tree District in California. This tree was 45 feet in circumference and nearly 15 feet in diameter. In this romantic abode, they probably meant to write abode, I'm going to say abode. In this romantic abode, he and his wife and the 5 children had beds, tables, chests, and other such furniture and things as a wild mountain home usually contains. Although the frost of 75 winters rested on his ample brow, he did not neglect that part of the divine injunction which says, "Be ye fruitful, multiply, and replenish the earth." For when the requisite years had flown, he was found to possess by the second wife 8 children. In the meantime, he had built a cabin and acquired 1,400 acres of good land, and was one of the solid men of the country. His second wife died, and after a short period of mourning, he went to Virginia, that generous old state that had already furnished him 2, and he married a 3rd time, and her name was Elizabeth Grable, and she resided in Lee County. Mr. Burkhart was now a centenarian. He repaired to his cabin beside the faithful old tree where he lived for 5 years, and it is said a child or 2 were born. The third, better half of the old man died at the good age of 70. The grief-stricken husband bewailed her loss even more bitterly than those who had gone before her, but his days of sorrow were not many. He soon turned out to the log rolling and quilting, with which fashionable pastimes were frequent in their occurrence, and danced with the girls, entertained them with his cosmic songs, and was a regular gay old deceiver, as giddy as a girl of 15. That means happy, y'all. In the year 1835, at the great age of 110 years, he married a 4th time. The name of his last wife was Lavinia Morris, and her age was 35. The immense disparity of age, 75 years, worked harm. Dissensions arose and separation followed. No children blessed this union, and as all his others had become grown or died, the patriarch was left alone in the cold, cold world. Now, family, this particular man was also mentioned in the video, and there was actually a woman on there who wrote a book, and one of the grandmothers in her ancestry actually knew this man and passed down the stories about him. And in the stories that were passed down to them, they said that he didn't live to be 125, he lived to be 130. And they also said that he had a third set of teeth that came in, and when all his gray hair fell out, that the new hair came back in black. Now, let me go back to my story. So that same day that all this stuff happened, and I was able to find the video, and I got interested and started studying and all of this, I ended up going to a local health food store. And I've been to the local health food store before, but this particular day, the actual person who started the health food store was there in the store. And so I met him and talked to him for a few minutes, and he's a homeopathic doctor, and so we talked about things. We have lots of things in common when it comes to eating clean and living clean and that type of thing. But that being said, I mentioned to him about this particular person who I was studying, and I told how this lady had said that he had a third set of teeth that came in. And then this man told me that his grandfather, who lived to be 99, actually had a third set of teeth that came in. Isn't that something? That's not something you hear every day, that you might have a third set of teeth that come inside your mouth. It's really deep that all of these different accounts of people living in all of these hollowed out sycamore trees, that it's just deep that they were sycamore trees, because we understand that the sycamore fields constantly finding new ways to see the Lord. And I am reminded of Psalm 91. Psalm 91 verse 9 says, "Because thou hast made the Lord, which is my refuge, even the Most High, thy habitation." Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that amazing? You see, when He is your habitation, you don't have to have the house on the hill with the infinity pool. No, you can have the hollow of a tree, and you can be content. Do y'all remember what the Messiah said to the trees in the book of Remembrance of Melchizedek? Let's read it. Let's go to the book of Remembrance of Melchizedek, chapter 2, and let's read verse 84. That's the book of Remembrance of Melchizedek, chapter 2, verse 84. It says, "And he said to the trees, sometimes the children of my Father will find themselves to be weak. Who will go for me to carry the feelings of strength? It will need to be one of you. Who will live close to them in their daily lives? Someone who can be their home and help them to keep warm and cook their food and give them places to sleep and to sit." Do y'all see that? Do you see how intimately connected to our everyday lives that trees really are? Are any of you in a house right now that is made of wood? Are any of you sitting on furniture that is made of wood? Are any of you sitting in front of a fireplace where wood is burning? The trees, the Elim, have been an amazing support for humanity. I'm so thankful that the Father shows forth His glory by placing trees all over the earth. Shout out to Kabodiel. I want to show y'all one more thing. One more thing to show y'all. Let's go to the book of Luke, chapter 19. We're going to go to Luke chapter 19, and let's read verses 1 through 5. That's Luke chapter 19, verses 1 through 5. It says, "And Messiah entered and passed through Jericho. And behold, there was a man named Zacchaeus, which was the chief among the publicans. And he was rich. And he sought to see Messiah, who he was, and could not for the press, because he was little of stature. And he ran before and climbed up into a sycamore tree to see him, for he was to pass that way. And when Messiah came to the place, he looked up and saw him, and said unto him, Zacchaeus, make haste and come down, for today I must abide at thy house." What? Family, what have we been learning about righteousness? What have we been learning about the right relationship? Are you seeing how all of this comes together? Look what we just went over today. We talked about the righteous definition of the sycamore tree, which is to constantly find new ways to see the Lord. And look what Zacchaeus did. He climbed into a sycamore tree to see the Messiah. And when the Messiah came by, look how he responded. Because of the right relationship, Zacchaeus climbed in just the right kind of tree that the Messiah could not pass by and not look up and see him. So he said, "Make haste and come down, for today I must abide at thy house." Why is that? Because the sycamore feels to find new ways to see the Lord. And Zacchaeus used the sycamore righteously. That sycamore for Zacchaeus was righteous element. Just like our first mother Eve misused the cedar, she used it the wrong way. You understand? There is a right relationship with everything in creation. So we have to be sure that we are using things in keeping with righteousness, the right relationships with the spirits in element. To all of y'all who have ears to hear, let you hear. Family, I love each and every one of you. The water, Kai, all praises to Anokised, Bahashem Matzah, the Lamb. This is little son Sabal, Nabaya, saying much love and much shalom. He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God. In Him will I trust. Surely He shall deliver thee from the snare of the fowler and from the noisome pestilence. He shall cover thee with His feathers, and under His wings shalt thou trust. His truth shall be thy shield and buckler. Thou shalt not be afraid for the terror by night, nor for the arrow that flieth by day, nor for the pestilence that walketh in darkness, nor for the destruction that wasteth at noonday. 1,000 shall fall at thy side, and 10,000 at thy right hand, but it shall not come nigh thee. Only with thine eyes shalt thou behold and see the reward of the wicked. Because thou hast made the Lord, which is my refuge, even the Most High, thy habitation. There shall no evil befall thee, neither shall any plague come nigh thy dwelling. For he shall give his angels charge over thee, to keep thee in all thy ways. They shall bear thee up in their hands, lest thou dash thy foot against a stone. Thou shalt tread upon the lion and the adder, the young lion and the dragon shalt thou trample under feet. Because he hath set his love upon me, therefore will I deliver him. I will set him on high, because he hath known my name. He shall call upon me, and I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will deliver him and honor him. With long life will I satisfy him and show him my salvation.